Our next guest says that while Secretary Raimondo stated she stood her ground during her visit to China, things may play out differently in the coming months here in the U.S. Joining us now, Derek Scissors, Asia economist at the American Enterprise Institute. Mr. Scissors, welcome. Good to have you with us. My sense of my read of your verdict on this trip is that it was pretty weak tea indeed.
Yeah, I mean, it's not clear why these trips are occurring. Obviously, Secretary Yellen went, Secretary Blinken went. We have to have a dialogue with China. You know, you can have a dialogue with China over a Zoom call or a phone call. So there's that problem. I think the important part of the trip is actually after Secretary Raimondo comes home. She has a very big decision with regard to semiconductor export controls that is due in the next 5 weeks or so, both the rules and the licenses. That's going to impact U.S.-China economic relations and also possibly strategic relations much more than her trip will.
So tease this out for me, this decision of the export controls, which have been much talked about and much trumpeted, and the actual licenses could be. There's a way, isn't there, to say, yes, we're going to have these export controls in place, but allow the licenses to proceed, which would sort of obviate the controls, right?
Yeah, that's actually what we've been doing. I mean, we put these interim controls on as an interim rule in October of last year. That was a step in what I consider to be the right direction, but it was certainly a step in a clear direction. But then we handed out 3 exemptions to major foreign chip makers, TSMC, Hynix, and Samsung. If we pass a really tough final rule, if that's what the secretary decides, but we say, oh, except for these 3 huge chip makers, then there's no point to the final rule. So there are 2 decisions here, what the rule should look like, but also if you're going to hand out license exemptions, then the rule doesn't matter anymore.
So if you're going to go down this route, you would argue that you need to make it a blanket enforcement of export controls, not only from U.S. companies selling into China, but for these 3 foreign companies.
That's right. I mean, the Biden administration talks a lot about small yard, high fence. But if you say, all right, here's our rule, and it's tough, and we're protecting these particular things, in this case, semiconductors, but we say, except for 3 very large companies, then you have giant holes in your fence, and it doesn't make any sense. So people will focus on the rule as they should. We've been waiting a long time for the final rule, but the bigger decision is actually whether these licenses are going to be extended, in which case Secretary Raimondo, should stop saying she's being tough on China.
So what did Secretary Raimondo or the U.S. get out of this trip, if anything?
Oh, I can't imagine they got much of anything. Again, the Biden administration seems to value these trips for the sake of having the trips. They even say that. The world expects us to keep communicating. I don't know why communication would by itself be a good thing. China's own course is being decided by Xi Jinping. He doesn't like the private sector. He doesn't like foreign companies. Nothing important is going to change in that respect because a U.S. cabinet member visited.
But yeah, I'm going to pick up on something you said there. I don't know why sort of communication is a good thing in and of itself, but is the opposite potentially worse? No communication,
well,
and doesn't that increase the possibility of misunderstandings and so forth?
Well, on the security side, I can see this. But, we talk about our economic policy steps for months and months. We're, not 10 months into the export control decision. It's not like the Chinese don't hear us discussing it. They don't know what's going on. It's a big surprise. Outbound investment decision that Secretary Yellen had was 2 years in the making. So I just don't see that there's this big chance of an important misunderstanding about U.S. policy because U.S. economic policy, with good reason, proceeds very slowly.
Derek, always good to see you. Thank you for your insights today. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, China is sure to be on the agenda at CNBC's annual Delivering Alpha event. It's just 4 weeks away, September 28th. In fact, less than 4 weeks, less than a month. But there's still time to register. You can scan the QR code on the screen, or you can go to cnbcevents.com. We have a very good lineup indeed.